Hello YouTube. This video is about door latches so that we can open and close our door. I've gone through the bins that are left for the 49 that's got parts in it other than the glass and the chrome. And this is what I've come up with. I've actually got a complete set of door handles. I have a trunk latch. I have inside door handles. I have a cover for the trunk latch. I have the, I don't know what you call these, the jam locks for the doors. And most importantly, I didn't know what these were until I was playing with them, this is a clip. Let me see. This is a clip that goes on the door handle in the door to hold it in place. So I've got 4 of those, which is fantastic. I think I have enough door handles to complete the project. We have 1 lock here. This is the lock mechanism. The other 3 are in the doors, so I have an example of how to put it together. It really needs to be cleaned up. The other thing I've done is I went through those bins and pulled every nut and bolt out of the bins that I could find and cleaned them all up. I tumbled them so they're all like new. Hopefully I've got all the correct bolts and nuts to bolt it together, but that's what we're gonna do. The first thing I think we'll get going is we're gonna clean these locks up, and we'll clean this up. We'll sandblast them and powder coat them a nice semi-gloss black. And while we're waiting for this, we'll work on this lock. We'll clean it up and lubricate it and get it to work right, and then we'll put it in the door. With the slide locks, powder coated white instead of black because they'll be inside the door and won't be able to see the black, so I did them in white. These are the locks that go on the handles, and these are done. I think the next thing we're going to do is work on the trunk latch. These are the 3 parts that I have. This one is a cover, and I'll powder coat that silver. This is the handle, and this is the lock mechanism. Unfortunately, we don't have the key for it. The handle slides into the lock mechanism like that. There's a slot right here that this piece slides into, and if this can turn, then I'll be able to unlatch the latch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind that oblong thing off, and I'll double nut it on the back so that I don't put any pressure on it. We'll have a lock mechanism that can't be locked, and will always open the trunk. So let's go grind these notches off. Okay, let's try that. We now have the notches ground off on the end of the handle so that it can be inserted into the lock and unlock it even though the handle is locked. We'll take some WD-40 and clean up the inside of our lock here. Spray it up real good, let it soak. And we'll do the same thing for the handle, even though we're not going to use it. And while that's soaking, we'll go powder coat this to silver. While that cover is in for powder coat, we'll clean up the lock mechanism and get rid of all the excess WD-40. We'll put a couple drops of oil on all the pivot points. And move that over to our finished area. We'll take our handle, which has been soaking in WD-40, wipe it down. What has to happen here is the handle gets inserted into the lock mechanism, and the bolt comes through the back here. Now, it used to be there was an oblong piece of metal there that we ground off. Because what you do is you'd screw this down tight and then the shaft of the handle would turn to unlock the latch. But because we've rounded that shoulder off, this handle has to be able to turn. And we can't just put a nut on there because it'll make it tight. So what I think we're going to do is take a washer, put a washer on there like that, and then put the nut on top of that, like so. And then we're going to drill a hole through the nut and the shaft and put a cotter pin in there, and that'll keep it from spinning off. Let's punch this nut and drill a hole in it for a cotter pin. And that hole is plenty big to accept a cotter pin. I now have the nut with the hole in it screwed onto the handle, and what we're going to do is drill the corresponding hole through the shaft of the handle so we can put that cotter pin all the way through. With a cotter pin through our nut and shaft, the nut can't come loose, but leaves it loose enough so that we can turn the handle without the key. With all the pieces cleaned and lubricated, and bolts and screws located, some of which I were able to salvage out of the bolts that we cleaned up, we're ready to put this in a car. We'll start by taking the latch and setting it up inside the body here, like so. We'll take a bolt and a lock washer and start it loosely, and another one. Then there's two little Phillips that go in holes back here. Then there's another bolt and lock washer further up into the trunk. Next, we'll insert the handle and work it its way into the lock. Here's our modified shaft with a hole in it. And we'll put a washer on there and put the nut on there. This is our modified nut with a hole in it. And then what we got to do is line up the hole in the shaft with the nut. Stick the cotter pin in and bend it over. There's one side, and there's the other. Now does it work? Yeah, I'd say it works. Here we go. My concern is not so much will it close, but will it open? There's a solid bulkhead there, so I can't get back in here unless I take all the screws out to crawl through here. There's no way through the bottom, and there's no way through the top here. So let's see if it'll close. It's hitting here. There's a gap over here. Let's give it a little more force. Okay, it's closed. Does it open? Yes, it does. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, we need some alignment, but this latch is done. Let's move on to a door latch. Once again, I return to the bins of remaining parts. And this, I believe, is the lock mechanism for the passenger side. And we're going to go through the same procedure that we did with the latch for the trunk. The first thing we're going to do is soak it up really good with WD-40. I have figured out how this thing works, but it is extremely complicated. So I have no intention of taking it apart. I'm just gonna clean it, lubricate it, and put it back. It works pretty good. This is the release. This is the lock. So that works freely now. Let's get a little air and blow off some of that gook. I'm gonna dry it off. All right. Let's put some oil on the moving parts here. And again, I'm just gonna soak it up a little bit and then I'll wipe it down. Let's exercise it a little bit. I happen to know that by pushing in right here, you're supposed to be able to release it. And it does. And the handle. So I have an example of how this thing goes. Let's see, it goes like so. Up into here. And through the hole, like so. Take a screw. I don't know why they use these Phillips. You can't really tighten them very well. There's one. There's two. And then we got 1, 2, 3 to put in the end here. All right, now there's no adjustment on this, so we just tighten it up. All right, it's tight. Does it still work? There is locked, and I forgot how to unlock it. Here's unlocked. So yes, it still works. Works good. Let's put the door handle in. These are the last two pieces of the puzzle of putting the lock into the door. I had no example on how that went together. You saw when we started that we powder coated all 4 of them at once. They were in a bin, they were never in the door. So when I looked at this, I could see that it went like this and slid like that to lock the handle in. But I couldn't figure out how to do that because it's right up against this edge of the door. I was getting ready to cut a hole in the edge of the door so that I could slide it in. Turns out there's already a hole there. But it must have taken me 20 minutes to figure that out. So what we have to do is slide this in. Now, we have to put the handle in. And the handle has the plunger on it that activates the lock. And what we have to do is put it through the hole and get it into the plunger at the same time. That's not easy, and I tried a bunch of ways to do it. And I finally gave up and just reached up inside and lined it up. And that's how this is going to go. So there. I reach up in here, and I can feel the tang. And I can feel the recess it's supposed to go into. And I got to get the tang into the recess. It's in. Now I got to get the door handle all the way on. Like that. The door handle is clipped in. And now we have to push this clip in. And give it a little persuasion. Now there's a hole here, but there's no corresponding hole in the door, and I would think that that would be something that would hold that clip in place. Let's check and see if it works. So that would be locked. That's unlocked. Locked, unlocked, works great. Next thing is to put the claw on the door and see if we can lock the door, unlock the door. With a little dab of anti-seize on the ends of the bolts, we'll stick it on here. See if we can engage the captured nut. I got that one. Okay, got them both. Now what I'm going to do is put this thing high and outside. Now, once again, we're at that dilemma where I'm going to close this door, and I hope it opens. Let's close the door. And that's expected. And I can look in here and see we're too high. So let's move it down. Well, let's just go a little ways. Let's not go. Let's see. It was up there. It was up there. We can go down, up, out. We can go that far. Let's go halfway and adjust it all the way up. Ooh. It definitely needs to go in. That's pretty good. I like that. Digging through the bins, I was able to find 4 inside door handles. Let me give you an example of what a bin looks like. And we look inside, at least they group some of the stuff together. It looks like it's mostly headlights and trim. But if you look at the bottom of these things, look at all the parts that are down here in the bottom. And that's the stuff I'm digging through to find parts for the door. For example, these are the door panels. They're the panels that go on the inside of the door to block off all the mechanism. Anyway, back to the door handles. I found these 4 door handles, and 2 of them are marked. This is driver side rear, and this is driver side front. And if you note, if I lay them out, these 2 handles don't have as much inclination in them as these 2 handles. So I'm going to assume that this is the passenger side front door handle. So let's go put it on the car. By the way, this is the collection of nuts and bolts and clips that I've gotten out of the bottoms of these bins that I've cleaned up, and then I'm going through to find the right bolts and nuts for the doors. If this is the passenger side front door handle, inside door handle, what we have to do is find the right rod that goes between the handle and the lock. And I found I believe all 4 rods. We need the rod to go from right there to right there. And what it needs to do is pull on this lever right here to release the ball. So we need this length. Now I could make one up, but I think I have them. These are the 4 rods that I found. And 2 of them are identical, except for which way the bend goes. And I'm going to believe that these 2 are identical too. No, they're not. They're different. But these 2 are the same. And this is the right length. So now what we have to do is figure out which rod goes in. Now this rod fits here, like so. That's not a bad fit. And goes into there like so. Okay, so I think that's the right rod. Let's put it in. With the handle and the rod separate, we can stick the rod into that hole and stick this end of the rod into that hole and put the handle up. Okay, with the screws loosely in place, it appears that it works correctly. So you can get out from inside. We'll just tighten these screws up. And we've got one door done. Only 3 more to go. Only 3 more to find parts for. But I think we can do it. There we go. And this thing, which is a guide, clips in there. It doesn't stay though. Wonder if I got the wrong rod. Well, this may not be the right rod. We're going to try the other rod. So this one would have to go in. I think that fits better. I think that's the right rod. So let's put the handle back on for the umpteenth time. So after trying the other rod in place, it didn't fit as good. I put this one back in, gave it a little touch of a bend. Now it works great. On to the next door. We only got 3 more to go, and we got to find parts for all 3. This is the driver's side front door lock, and we've run into our first problem. This ball here is supposed to turn, but it's all corroded. It looks like somebody chewed on the end of it, and the ball doesn't turn. And there's no freeing it up. So I've made a couple calls to junkyards, and we'll see if we can get a used one. But for now, we'll put it in the car. This is the door that had the lock in it. And it was my example door on how to put the other ones together. However, this one is totally froze up. Nothing moves, so we got to take it apart. And this rod right here, I don't know if you can see it, this rod right here is the lock mechanism. So I want to delete it so that it cannot be locked. So we need to take this apart. All right, there's the lock rod. Well, how am I going to get this thing out if it's frozen? And I'm in trouble now. This ball has to come down to this hole in order to get it out of the door, and it's frozen. There we go. One lock mechanism. The background noise that you might hear is rain. It's raining outside, and it's December for New York. I've gotten pretty good at putting these things in. Shouldn't take too long. Here we go. There, it's in place. I didn't hit the hunt for these screws. They were in the door. Let's tighten the screws up. They had them pretty tight. don't know why they didn't use bolts. This is the last rod that we need to put in, and it goes here, like so. But I believe the rod is bent. I think they bent it when they took it out. So we're gonna have to be careful when we put it in. Here we go. Well, that appears to be the way it works, because now the mechanism works. Unfortunately, this thing is bent. They bent it, and the clip that holds that to the door is missing. Okay, I think we're good. We got to put the outside door handle on. This is the worst closing door on the car, and I think it's because the car actually sagged over time. It was braced, but I think it actually sagged, so that this door rubs right here. Now I might be able to get some of it back with an alignment of the door, and maybe that's for a different video, but this is pretty good here, and this is tight. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do about it. I don't really want to grind the top of the door. Bad Chad, I've seen him cut the roof and hammer it back and then weld the roof back to give you room so that you don't mess with the door. And that may be something that I'm going to do in the future. But let's get the door handle on. This is the clip that slides into the door handle to lock it into the door, and at the same time we have to take this plunger and engage the lock. So that's a little bit of an operation. We start by putting the lock in, and it slides in the end of the door until the big holes in the clip line up. And now what we have to do is try to engage the plunger on the lock while feeding the handle in through the car. There's the plunger. There's the plunger. Almost there. I got it. Now I have to get the handle into the door. You got to keep this button pushed to keep it engaged with the plunger and the lock. You get the handle to go in the door at the same time. And there we go. Now we slide this clip forward, and the door handle is locked in place. And we tap the clip all the way in place. And now we should be able to unlock this door from the outside. So that's the lock position. That's the unlock position. It works. Next, we install the catch for the lock. And what I like to do is put it halfway up and down and halfway in and out. So we go halfway and halfway, and we'll tighten it there. Now I don't have the right bolt. I'm thinking this one will fit. No. So I only have one bolt. I could only find one bolt. So I'm going to have to order one someplace. But let's see if the door closes. It's latched. The seam is not bad. And it comes undone. So we're good. I just need another bolt. Okay, I was wrong. I had to go further in. There we go. And remember, this is the worst door in a car. Whoops. They all need to be aligned. I think that's another video. I think we accomplished what we set out to do. We got latches on all 4 doors. We got a latch on the trunk. You can open it from the inside and the outside. If you enjoyed this video, there'll be more.